Jeffrey rationalizes his addiction.
Video games are good for you because they improve your coordination and your memories and your reflexes, and also this is productive because I'm training to be an esports athlete. And it's not a waste of time because I only play for 1 hour a day, I promise.
But he doesn't realize that he's spending more than 30 hours a week playing his video games. Jeffrey's using the virtual world to escape from reality. Video games have been a part of my life since I was around 8 years old playing RuneScape on our old family computer. I was always consumed by RuneScape. Why? I was only allowed to play for 1 hour a day, but around the clock my mind would be thinking about RuneScape. And I realized why this was the case recently, and it's really sad. Adonis levels up in real life instead of the virtual world. Whilst other men conquer challenges and explore in video games, Adonis goes on real life adventures. He sees and experiences things that only few men have. He collects artifacts and gold and swords. Adonis looks around at the men, no, the boys of today, consumed by the pixels on their screens. And he wonders why they don't just play the game of life instead. I've never done this before on my channel, but I want to give you a trigger warning. If you don't want to hear details of child abuse, then don't watch this video. I realized recently why video games were so addictive to me. It was an escape from my real life, and not just for the hour or so that I was allowed to play video games, but around the clock. It was something to just focus on instead of reality. Video games served as a distraction, a safe, peaceful place away from child abuse and neglect. So let's go through my gaming history. I started gaming properly at about 8 years old. I played before that on like the PS2, some random games, but for me, the moment when I fully became a gamer was about 8 years old, when I started playing RuneScape. And I'm playing it every single day. I'm constantly thinking about it. Eventually I'm getting older and older, and we get into high school and I'm getting made fun of because I played RuneScape. It was cool when we were in primary school, but apparently like as soon as you get into high school, you're not allowed to play it without getting fucking mocked for it. And that was quite sad because pretty much all of my achievements were on RuneScape. Instead of being so social in real life, I've made a lot of friends on RuneScape. Instead of like leveling up in some kind of skill or sport in real life, like, you know, often other kids play like football or anything, I was leveling up in RuneScape. Eventually I quit. You never really, the saying is that you never really quit RuneScape, you just go AFK. And so I went AFK for like a while, and then this was the first time I had ever like quit before. I think it was quite related to this peer pressure of like, you know, it's not cool to play RuneScape and everything, because immediately after I stopped playing RuneScape, I started playing Farmville. Like a dead ass, I got into Farmville like full time for like a fucking month. I was literally just like playing it. That was like the game that I was obsessed about. And I think that's because it had like a social aspect that a bunch of people from my class also played it. And in high school I got a PS3 as well, and I was playing some like normie games like Call of Duty and all that. And to be honest, I was never really like, I played them, and you know, played them like a fair amount, like Call of Duty, Black Ops, Zombies and everything. But the games that I at least had and played on the PS3 didn't have the expansive virtual world where I could escape from reality. And so eventually I moved on to Minecraft, and this was like one of the main games in my life too, alongside RuneScape. I played on the Hunger Games servers. So the Hunger Games movie had just come out. People had made like servers where it imitated Hunger Games. You'd all start off, you've got no items, and you have to go like fight everyone and kill everyone. It's so exhilarating. And this is where I really started to come out of my shell, because on this Hunger Games server you'd make friends and you team up with people and you get them on Skype. And so I really started to feel like important here, because I started to play the server, I started to make friends, and eventually we play as a group. And I really felt like a valuable member of the group. And to this day, like, I still keep in touch with a couple of the guys. And we would play literally every single day, me and this group together. And this was when I was in high school, and I was only allowed to play 1 hour per day. So it was quite tricky. It was quite like a headache to like, you know, only get like an hour or so. And then sometimes you'd be in the middle of a game when your hour's up and you're getting like shouted at by your parents. And so I had to like stop and let everyone down because I was leaving the game. But, you know, we were fully immersed into this. I loved the game. I loved Minecraft. I loved Hunger Games. I made a YouTube channel which has like 900 subscribers. And I was making money from it and everything from YouTube about this server. And me and a couple of the guys made like a group YouTube channel. And it was like a lot of fun to like revolve my life around this. And there's a video that came to mind that I made, and it's quite creepy, I'm not gonna lie. So here is from when like the trigger warning starts. I'll play the video, and so I'm just doing something random on Minecraft. The video is actually 50 seconds long, but I'll just show you like I'll show you the last 5 seconds or the 10 seconds of it, and yeah, we'll watch it now.
Yeah, so I mean it's pretty cool. You know exactly what block you're going to be going on. It's only the grass, and I think it looks pretty nice as well. So see ya.
So right at the end of the clip, I'm surprised that I uploaded this. I had like an obsession with wanting to like, record and like upload as fast as possible. So I don't know if like I didn't even consider that it's probably not appropriate to post something like this. But right at the end of the clip, you hear me getting shouted at, getting like fully like verbal abuse, like threatened.
Pretty nice as well. So see ya.
So the sentence gets cut off, but what you don't hear is like, if you don't shut up, I'll hit you. So during this time, through all my childhood, I felt very, very like immersed in video games. Like it was so important, and I think it's so valuable for us to discuss what was going on at home in detail, so that we can put 2 and 2 together. Like, why does a kid immerse themselves into video games to this obsessive level? So let's go through a realistic, average, like normal day in the life of teenage me. Like let's say probably about 13 or so. This happened for all my childhood and everything, but we'll just say about the time that I was playing Minecraft and I made that video. So I'd wake up sleep deprived after a night of tossing and turning. I still do that to this day, like just a lot of tossing and turning, changing positions throughout the night. I got like frequent nightmares and everything as well. I'd go to school, but before I would go peacefully, I would make any excuse possible not to go, which is kind of weird because I didn't obviously like feel safe at home or anything, but I didn't really want to go to school a lot. I would heavily like lie to my mum all the time. I'd try and force myself to be sick and everything, and I'd get to school and I was like the bully in some cases as well. But I just remember like I was always mindless in school and I wanted to focus. I genuinely really wanted to focus and get good grades, but I'd just be sat in the class and they used to feel so long that I'd just like started daydreaming. I wouldn't understand what the teacher was saying, and I'd almost like snap back to reality, and the teacher would be screaming at me that I had been talking, I'd been disruptive in class or something. The teacher would be screaming, and I remember like throughout all of school I just always feel like left out and excluded by my friend group, and I felt like I was like somewhat disliked in class, and so I often got yelled at by teachers, and I never really understood why. Like at least to me, everyone else was talking too. It seemed like a bunch of people in the class were talking, like whilst we're doing some work, but it just seemed like I was the one who was like getting picked at, and the teacher would like fully like scream in my face. And this is like a bit of a side rant, but man, those teachers. I'm not even gonna lie, bro. Like, I don't want to speak ill, but imagine like you're a traumatized boy who needed like a safe space to go to in the middle of the day, and imagine how like rejuvenating it could be to have had supportive teachers. I go in and I'm getting more traumatized. I'm getting like screamed at by like fucking adults, getting like threatened and everything because I spoke. I disrupted the class apparently. Like it genuinely felt like, I might be wrong. My perception of it might be wrong, but I'm sure out of the class of 30 kids, like a couple of people were talking, whispering, talking about the class, talking about just gossiping or something, and I did the same thing. And it just always seemed to be me that was picked out. I don't want to like pull the race card or something, but like it was a class of like white people with a white teacher, and I was like the only brown kid in my year or anything. So not the only brown kid, but there was more. But it was like there's like 5 brown kids in the entire year or something. I was let down. I was made to feel worse by these teachers, and again, like a side rant, but now that I'm older and I see teachers in a different light, and I just think like this is a system. Like these people, these fucking blokes and these like degenerate women and everything, like they're fucking teaching our new age of children. Like they have their own problems. Like you right now, if you're a young person, if you're watching this, maybe if you're a little bit older, you'll agree with me, or maybe you haven't even seen the side of teachers that I've seen. And I'm not talking about them shouting at me. When you're a little bit older and you hop on fucking Tinder and you start like going on a date with these teachers, you sleep with a couple of them, or you see them in this type of light, trust me when I say that they're not as fucking like nice angel. The amount of them that've got like heavy alcoholism, the amount of them that've got like fully up trauma, mental health and everything, the way that they treat their own kids and everything. When I've seen this other side to their life, and it's like I can't believe that these are the type of people who are like teachers. This is a huge side note to what we're talking about, but 100% one of the sort of goals that I'm working towards is that I'm going to set up a lifestyle where I homeschool my kids. Of course, we'll bring in like high quality tutors and everything, but it'll be in like a nice safe place where they're not getting fucking screamed at. And so that's what it feels like these teachers, they've got their own trauma, they're like pushing it, they're displacing their fucking trauma onto the kids like onto me. A couple of the teachers were fucking brutal. Like they knew. I'm not even gonna lie. Like a couple of them fucking knew what was going on at home. And the way that they would threaten me, it would put me into shock. It would literally terrify me. The way like I would speak in class, you know, I'd misbehaved, I got into a little fight with someone, and teachers who knew what was going on would say it with almost this like cheeky thing of like, I'll call your father and I'll bring him into class. Like, you know, we'll have a meeting in school. So what's happening at home? So I finished school at like 3 p.m, you know, I rush home to get my 1 hour of video games. This is like, you know, the moment that I've been waiting for all day. Literally could not wait for it. All day I've been thinking about what I'm going to be doing. Literally, this was like my obsessive thoughts is, okay, when I get back into the video game, the virtual world, the RuneScape, Minecraft, what am I exactly going to do? If we play Hunger Games, like how should we kill people? Or if I go into like RuneScape, what should I do? What should I train next? And usually this 1 hour of me time, of like, you know, self-care time of playing video games, it'd be fine, uninterrupted. It'd be like the height of my life, right? Sometimes it'd be interrupted, which would always like heavily agitate me and really upset me, to the point that with how much it would upset me, it would anger my family, because they, you know, like they're seeing like little computer nerd who's like really upset that he didn't get the full hour today. But that's how it felt. It felt like the clock's ticking. This is the 1 hour I have where I'm safe and I'm happy. And, you know, you don't want to lose any of those precious minutes. And, you know, it takes a solid fucking 5 minutes to load up Skype and everything. And so, you know, sometimes, yeah, I'd play fine. I'd hop on with the friends and everything. It'd be awesome. And I'd always get, like, this sense of, like, you know, detachment. I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to log out. But I'd get, like, shouted at by parents. Or sometimes we'll explain this later, but sometimes, like, over the few years, my dad would have, like, passwords and timings and everything on my computer. So it'd literally, like, shut down and, like, not let you go onto it after an hour of playing. And you know what's interesting? The moment the hour of playing video games would be over, my attention would turn to binge eating. I'd literally like eat like a locust. I'd go around the house, any snacks we had, low quality snacks, whatever, not proper food, but like low quality, like junk food, everything. My attention was on food, with the coupling of like getting food, eating it mindlessly whilst thinking about RuneScape and Minecraft, what I'd do the next day. At this point, it's like 4 or 5 p.m. and I'd often have like an argument or a full-on fight with my brother, and, you know, he'd just be like nasty to me or something. It'd either be that, where we'd, you know, fully have like a clash and everyone's screaming, like me and him are shouting at each other, he's throwing something at me, I'm doing something to him. It'd either be that, or we'd be sat like best friends giggling, like literally like laughing with so much tears in our face because we're just like giggling about something. It was always just either of the two. So maybe me and him would like watch a movie, would, you know, sit around, talk about RuneScape or whatever, and then 6 p.m. would roll around. 6:30, and I hear the doorbell ring, so it's time to start my routine. So as soon as I hear the doorbell ring, it's like I'd move swift. I'd grab a book and I'd go lock myself in the toilet and just sit in there for about an hour. So I'd hear my dad enter the house, you know, say hi to everyone. I'd hear him like come upstairs and check my room. Oh, I'm not in the room, I'm in the toilet where it's safe, so it's like he wouldn't say anything or anything. And I'd stay in there for long enough that I knew that he'd be like settled watching TV. As soon as I knew it was safe, I'd come out and very quietly, like almost like, it always used to feel like almost like detective type of shit, where you're like trying not to step on the creak, you know, like the wooden floors, like there's certain ones that creak, and it almost felt like a weird game of like a high risk, high reward game, where if you didn't step on the creak, you got to like not get beaten that day. And so I'd come to my room, and sometimes it'd be fine. Like sometimes I'd stay in my room all night and like, you know, get to go to sleep and everything, no problem, the last few hours of the day. And other times I'd hear like my dad's footsteps come up and I'd get fucking scary. So when he'd come and speak to me, like it felt like an interrogation. Like I had to prove that I was innocent about just whatever he could think about. So it'd be random stuff of like, did I drink enough water today? Show me your school water bottle. And if, you know, I pulled my water bottle out of my bag, and if it wasn't close enough to being empty, which meant that, you know, I didn't drink much water today, that he'd start screaming like with aggression. A lot of the times he'd ask me about school, and he'd ask me to pull out, like in school we had like these planners, like this homework diary, so like, you know, you go onto it, it says like the date and it says, okay, what homework do you have today, when is it due for? He'd ask to like see that. So he'd see it, sometimes it'd be fine, but sometimes like he'd get really angry if there was a homework that was due in for the next day, especially. Like he'd get so pissed off. I remember one time, it was daytime as well, from what I can remember, like this fucking mad story, bro, but from what I can remember, it's like, it's in this room, and it was quite like bright, so it must have been quite early, so there was still time to do it. But he checks it and there's a homework and he says, when's that due in for? And I said, tomorrow. And before I even got to explain, like, it was just like a quick 5-minute task to, I don't know what it was, but to maybe Google something about something. Like, we had that lesson, let's say it was science, on that same day, which was Wednesday, and then before our next science class for Thursday, we were supposed to like just check up something small. Straight away, he just slapped me with force. Like, my whole fucking body jolted. Like, my dad's a pretty big guy, and my whole body jolted. Like, you're never really ready for a hit by your caregiver. That type of stuff always felt very, very unfair. And so straight after that, he didn't, angrily like tell me to do the work or anything. And sometimes at this point there'd be like a huge family argument. Usually not like because if he's hurt me or something, but like it'd be something separate. It'd be like he's arguing with my mum, or he's arguing with my brother, or anything like that. Everyone's just arguing, everyone's screaming. And when there'd be a family argument, in a weird way, it'd be somewhat. It used to feel pleasurable and good for me, because I'd almost be like a third party's perspective, just kind of watching, knowing that I was fairly safe that day. Because if there's a whole family argument, I'm the one who's staying quiet, and like, I'm not going to get hit, I'm not going to get shouted at by anyone, because generally in a family argument, almost everyone would be like crediting me and saying like, oh, Hamza, it's like, you should be more like Hamza, because he just sits and he listens and he doesn't shout, he doesn't swear or anything. So that always felt quite like safe. But yeah, throughout the day, I keep stuffing myself with like as many snacks as possible, and obviously we know what it is now. I didn't really understand why. I thought it's just normal for like young people to just eat that much, but it was fully binge eating. And obviously we as adults, we know it was just eating for comfort. It was like eating as eating and getting full almost makes you feel safe in a way, and that's what I was trying to like get. The issue with that was that we'd get to dinner time and then I'd be too full. This is still like an average day, by the way. I hope you like know, I can promise you that this, I'm not exaggerating this type of shit, but we get to dinner time and it's, like Asian family cooking, and it's quite filling, bro, but I'd already be full from all of the snacks that I ate. And so that would cause like a big scene where then my dad's angry at me because I'm not able to eat like much of the food. I didn't like a lot of the food back then, and I did have this sense of like racism where I didn't like my culture. I didn't like my heritage. I wouldn't have considered myself a Muslim properly at this point. I think I would like disabandon my faith. But I hated all things like related to brown people. One, in the sense of, what was happening at home, but two, because of probably like propaganda of like seeing like brown people equals terrorist on the media, and, out of like racist friends and everything. So I really, really was just not interested in like eating Asian home cooked. Obviously I love that shit now, but like at the time I didn't, and I was already full with like just junk food and everything. And so we'd all eat together, but my dad would be like aggressively telling me like, no, finish it all. Sometimes my mum would be saying it to him as well, like, no, he's not eating it, tell him to eat it and everything. So it'd be a solid 30 minutes. My sister and my brother are already done eating. My mum's done eating, but she's just kind of like chilling around the kitchen, and my dad's just like sat there just eyeing me up, just like getting aggressive. 30 minutes of me trying to force feed myself. And I just remember like it was such like a high level of food in like a bowl of, full like plate of rice and everything, and I'd felt so full and everything that I'd like barely take like obviously my hand would have been shaking all this shit, but I'm like barely taking like half a spoonful, trying to like gulp it down. It just be chewing it like so long. How can you eat when you're fucking crying and when you're in fear? And do you know what I mean? It was almost always the same thing when my dad would say like, he's gonna go watch TV or he's gonna go to the toilet, I better finish it by the time he's back. So I fully try, and I'm tearing up at this point. I'm getting ready for another fucking being or some bullshit. Sometimes my mum would like help me grab a few spoonfuls, put it onto her plate, she'd eat it quickly, or like she'd grab like a tissue and like hide some of it in there. But a lot of the times like I just didn't end up eating all of it. So my dad would come down, get like really angry. Like I could just visualize like sore red cheeks. Like I can literally just see like little Hamza with like cheeks that fucking sting because of like how hard he'd fucking slapped me, and my whole body would fucking jolt. So usually at this point my mum would sort of diffuse it, and she'd say like, John, like it's okay, that's enough now. And if I was crying, which usually I would be, then that's like the next thing my dad would focus on. So, at first it'd be like the homework, then it'd be the food, and then at this point he hated seeing me cry. And so usually it was this idea of like, if I was crying, he'd give me something to cry about. So he'd go more onto it, he'd like hit me more, tell me to stop crying and everything. Eventually I'd get like the freedom to like, okay, he's gonna go watch TV or whatever. So I go upstairs to the toilet. This was like routine. I'd do the exact same thing where I'd go into the toilet, I'd be crying my eyes out, and it felt really comforting to just like stare at myself in the mirror whilst crying. And I'd be like, like fully like hating my life and everything, and then that's when I would start like hitting myself. I would start like punching myself in the stomach, punching myself in like in the jaw and everything. Like it felt. I'd run the tap as well. That was always quite comforting. It's just I just have the tap water on and I just kind of like keep my fingers there. Like it was always like a sense of comfort just doing that and just like staring at, like just mouth breathing, like just like staring at myself in the mirror, just watching myself cry and just hating my life. And I'd stay in there for a while as well. And then sometimes like people would get pissed off at me because I was in the toilet for too long. Like, so I go to my room. It's almost night time. I'd usually be like whimpering a little bit, like, do you know how like a child or like a teenager cry? No, probably not even teen. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I had the mental sort of like capacity as a child because I didn't really get to develop in a sense. I don't know, but I would cry like a child, like you know, like that type of like the. And I don't think my dad liked that noise. So I'm not gonna lie, because that was I couldn't really like cry silently because I would have this like choking sense of crying. So if I was still crying at this point, which it was quite hard to stop, but if I was, it was like that was another thing then that would like piss my dad off. He'd get more angry. He'd like hear me, and at first, you know, he'd shout or everything, but when he'd shout from the other room to stop crying, that usually would make me cry more because I've now anticipated getting hit. So sometimes he'd come into the room and get like more aggressive because he could hear me crying. It'd be about 10 p.m. it's bedtime, and I'd like go to bed, but I usually couldn't sleep for quite a long time. And I'd always, like literally for so many years of my life, up until I was like late teenage years, I'd go to bed just thinking about what I'd do next in the video game. Like that was always like the way that I'd go to sleep, is like I would fully displace myself into that virtual world and think of like how important it was to know like what the plan was that I was going to do on RuneScape or Minecraft. Like I was going to, okay, so what I'll do next on RuneScape is that I'll wake up and then I'll do this quest, but to do that quest I need this skill, I need this item, so I'll go get that item, but I wonder, okay, I think you get that item from doing this. It's a very like interesting mechanism when you really think about it, like when your reality is so that like the little kid's like literally just like displacing himself. Instead of thinking about real life, you end up thinking, okay, what am I going to do next in this thing that is like virtual, it's not real life. And so that seemed to like soothe me to sleep. I remember that I never really had much of a problem falling asleep, because as long as I did this practice of like thinking what I'd do next on the video game, that was like, it's like my legendary, like still to this day sometimes I remember it when I'm going to sleep. I'm like, oh yeah, like what I'm going to do next on RuneScape. I have not played RuneScape in so long, but I literally like plan it out and everything. I literally fall asleep so quickly. But I would fall asleep fairly quickly, but it was really interesting that after I'd fall asleep, I would wake up and I'd toss and turn and switch positions so often in the night. And it just felt like normal, you know, that just felt like normal life to like, you know, just toss and turn and everything. Tracking my sleep as an adult now and like really understanding sleep and trauma, I realize like the way that I'd explain it in video game terms, which works with the title of this video, is that, do you know, like if you try and sleep in a video game and it says that you can't sleep because there's enemies nearby because it's not safe, that's kind of what sleeping has always been like for me. No matter where I am, no matter who I'm next to, whether I was in a different city, whether I was like sleeping next to a girlfriend or anything, or by myself or anything, I've always had like this weird thing of like I can fall asleep, but the moment an hour later, 2 hours later, I wake up. This sleep ring, I don't know how accurate it says it's like the most accurate data in the world or something, but it says that I wake up a solid like 20 times on average. I consciously remember about 5 times per night that I literally just wake up, I'm just awake, and I like toss and turn, I'll turn around and everything, and it's like exhausting. I think I've been sleep deprived for most of my life. Uncomfortable sleep and everything, and then I'd get a lot of nightmares as well, and then I'd wake up sleep deprived and do it all again. Like I was saying before, there was multiple times during my teenage years where I was restricted from playing video games, where my dad either put like a password on my computer, so like he had to enter it for me to go onto it, or he used like services, like there was like Norton Watchdog or something like that. I still remember, I still got PTSD from that motherfucking dog that would pop up on my screen like, you've had an hour, like it's time to turn it off. Like there was a point where I learned how to like glitch one of the services, like the softwares, where like I'd restart the account, I'd restart like change over to like a different Windows setting or something like that, and I could play for as long as I want. But I'm pretty sure I got beaten for doing that. So but at this point, like a few of the points when my dad, I'll even say, you know, my family limited my computer use, my video game, because like my mum would get angry and say like he's playing too much video games. And there was a point later on when even my brother was like setting on the fucking timing and the password. I'm like, you know, like fully like withholding my ability to play video games. And all of the times that they did it, I remember it seemed like a normal response from me to be very, very, very upset at that. They got more pissed off at my response because in their perception of like a normal person's perception, seeing a young child who, or, you know, a teenager who isn't allowed to play video games and he gets like really, really, really upset, that like pissed them off in a sense, because it's like they didn't want me to be upset at it. You know, the idea was like, wait, it's just a video game, like because you're getting pissed off, we're going to be more strict on you. But you've got to understand, like, imagine that being like your escape from the traumatic reality. So it wasn't exactly like video games that was taken away, it was safety. It's somewhat of an off note, but I wonder now if like the new generation of younger people who, you know, they've always had their phones, and I don't watch much like media type of shit anymore, but I wonder, like, there's probably loads of videos of like, I don't know, like a teenage girl getting a smartphone taken away from her as a punishment, and she's crying, she's like fully so upset, and everyone's laughing at her because, oh, you know, she's so addicted to her phone. And it's like, you don't realize, like, we're not crying out of like, oh, my technology, or like, oh, you know, like this hardware that has been taken away. It's what it represents. For me, video games was an escape away from this traumatic reality. For like a random like teenage girl that, you know, somewhat like, if you're watching this video, like me and you would insult her, like probably, in like, let's be honest, you probably thought that I would probably insult someone who's like addicted to their phone. I'm starting to like really emphasize with it, because it's not their phone that they're crying about, it's because their entire social life is built on there. And yeah, you know, it's sad to have it all online and stuff, but it is the way it is. And essentially, you're not taking away this teenage girl's phone, you're cutting off her connection to her tribe. And when that happens to a human, or you cut off their connection to their safety, it's like they break down, like they reach out like a little baby, like crying, trying to grab it back. But in terms of video games, it is not the answer. It's a temporary escape away from the harsh realities of life. But the thing is, your problems are waiting for you as soon as you stop playing. And then the issue is that you don't want to stop playing. So for me, I had, you know, this accountability in a sense that I wasn't allowed to play more than like X amount, like 1 hour per day. But for a lot of people, and also like me when I got older as an adult, we don't have any restrictions. And so if video games is your safety, if video games is like your distraction away from an unideal life, you never want to stop playing. And so you genuinely can easily, like, you know, some people will say like 6 hours a day is disgusting. If you're a video gamer, like, you know for a fact 6 hours a day is like, it doesn't even feel like much. It's like a solid like 12-hour day, more sometimes. And just like every form of escapism, like drugs and casual sex, or a lot of these things, it's like you build up a tolerance to it. So the amount of pleasure that you get goes down with how much you actually do it. So, you know, when you first start playing like a video game after so long, it's like you play 1 hour, you feel fulfilled. Like that's how it was for me. When I continued playing video games into adulthood, and when I was in university, and, you know, no one could tell me like not to play because I didn't live in this house, bro, I was playing 16-hour days, and it felt like I needed to. It goes from being like good enough, being 1 hour, to like leaving you with a sense of agitation when you've only played 12 hours. Real growth comes from facing the uncomfortable parts of life, not escaping from it, like feeling that uncomfortableness and then finding out a solution to it. But then the thing is, like, I don't have all the answers, because how can I say this? How can I say, you know, find out the solutions? Like, shut up, Hamza, like, to someone who can't solve that problem. To a little 12-year-old, little Hamza. Like, it's easy for me at this point in my life to say, like, you know, like, step away from video games and solve the problems yourself, because, you know, I've kind of done it now, but it's like I have a lot more control over my life now than I did then. Imagine a 12-year-old kid with abusive parents, and, you know, his escape from that is social media or TikTok or even porn or video games. And I thought for so long, like, my advice to this guy is like, yeah, it's just meditate and do gratitude journaling, like. And of course, meditation, gratitude journaling, but they're life-changing practices, 100%. They're awesome practices, but this kid might need that escape. Do you know, since I got into self-improvement, especially dopamine detoxing, dopamine detoxing is kind of like a lifestyle where you really try to minimize how much like dopamine, it's not scientific, but we say dopamine, it's just kind of like pleasurable activities like YouTube and TikTok and porn and drugs and junk food and whatever that you try and have in your life. So you almost like cut it all off. And so I've been on a dopamine detox, like, on and off for a while. And since I've got onto it, I've been very quick to demonize video games as like just a complete waste of time. You're a loser if you go onto them. I can start to to see like value in it. And I'm not gonna lie, like I've been honest in this video, like, so I had it's never really fully happened before, especially not next to someone, but I'd say I'd had not exactly a panic attack, but more like a PTSD attack, like a flashback attack. I was in a hotel, like we went on like an adventure, me and Mary, and we're just like meditating and everything, and I just get like a flashback of a memory that I had forgotten. Like I had forgotten it, like it was fully a repressed memory, and when it came in, it just fucking scared me, because I was just thinking like, how many other memories like that have I forgotten? Like how much of my life has been shaped by these like traumatic like child abuse experiences that I went through. The memory, like I see the flash of the memory right now. It's me being held up, sort of like, imagine the stairs of the house go up like this, and obviously like, you know, the banisters here, and me being sort of like held up sideways above the stairs with like a big fucking scary gap between me and like the bottom of the stairs. My dad holding me up there because I was somewhat obsessed with like getting tissues and like wetting them and like throwing them at like at people or at the wall, because if you throw like a wet tissue at the wall, it sticks. So I did that, and there was like, it was in like an awkward place above like the stairs. And so to get it, my dad had to like he didn't have to, but like he helped, you know, it's my responsibility because I'm a child who did it. So I remember being terrified. I didn't trust my dad, so I fully thought like he'd drop me. I was a couple of years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, but I would have been like a solid 2 meters, maybe probably more, away from like the ground, and he's like holding me up from the side. Like imagine I'm like Superman position, he's like holding me above the stairs, and I'm like trying to pick the things. I was fully I was like shaking, bursting into tears. I was screaming like, don't do it, don't do it. Like, so I remember that memory, and I had fully forgotten that. This terrifies me, and it really makes me feel something right now where it's just so like, there's so much fear involved with this concept of like repressing memories, because you don't even know what you'd been through. So I had flashbacks of this, and I had a lot of flashbacks at once. You know, I started almost like indulging in them, and I'm in the bed with Mary, and like we're in the hotel. It puts me into a disassociative state that I've not felt like for as long as I can think, where I literally turned into like a vegetable for a couple of hours. Like I know that sounds weird and stuff, and it's not funny, bro. Stop fucking laughing, bro. So I was still crying. I was mouth breathing. I was literally like, just like this. I swear to God, I was literally like this for like hours straight. Just tears down my face. She's talking to me. She's trying to help me. You know, she's telling me that she loves me. She's holding me and caressing me and everything. And I couldn't stop replaying it. It was like an extreme lack of mindfulness, where I was still somewhat, you know, hearing her and everything. And I was able to interact. Like if I wanted to, I don't know. But it was like, I was just tears streaming down my face, like snot just streaming down my face. Literally just like staring at the wall. Just literally full disassociative, and it took me like a while to be able to even move or do anything. And you know, she's made me a cup of tea. I don't even drink it. It's literally to the side of me. Like, I was able to respond, so it's quite a weird, I don't know how you'd fully explain what it was, but you know, she asked me if I wanted the cup of tea, and I was like, yeah. Like eventually, like we go on a walk. I'm just kind of like silent and everything, and I felt very fragile and sensitive, and she really tried to help me. I'm not gonna lie, Mary really did well that day, but no offense to Mary, like it's a very personal thing. Do you know what really helped me through all of that? I just started listening to Minecraft music. I swear to God, like she fell asleep. So, you know, this whole thing lasted for hours. She fell asleep, and I told her like, I'm like, in like a vegetative state. I was like, I'm gonna stay here, like just on the chair with the laptop, and I just ended up searching for like Minecraft music and literally just sitting and listening to it. And I just like got back into like reality and felt good, and like I went into bed and cuddled her, and I felt okay after that. So usually in my videos I do want to give like practical advice, but there's like so much to cover in this, so I only want to leave you with like a mindset. It is good to face your problems 100%. That's what I push so much. I take action, but solve those problems on your own accord, like when you're ready. Getting forced to face reality does not lead to growth. Like, it just leads to more stress. Face reality by yourself, like one step at a time, just one foot in front of the other. And if you need to go slow, or if you even need to take a couple of steps back, or if you need to like run all the way back home, like if that's what you gotta do, you gotta do. It's not a race to heal yourself, or, you know, try and like move on from video games, to try and like, you know, heal the parts of you that have been hurt and face reality and face your problems. It's not a race. Having patience and potentially like a level of like self-compassion for yourself is best. And it is literally like a journey, like a lifelong journey, which is probably just more fun if you do it with friends. So as for my story of like progressing from the teenage experience that you've heard, I discovered mental health about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. I didn't really know I didn't know what mental health was, never thought about it, but I kind of discovered the concept of it, about depression, anxiety, and I learned a lot about it. I read books and I took courses on it and everything. And I started meditating and gratitude journaling every day. Eventually I started kickboxing, and that's really, really helped with the anxiety. So my anxiety has always felt like I've got to be ready for an attack. I've got to be ready to defend myself and everything. And that's it. Like, imagine getting an intrusive thought, like, get ready, this guy's going to attack you. You're just walking past like literally a normal person, and your mind plays out the whole fight that could happen. Then imagine that happening with almost everyone you walk past. Like, I know that sounds like over exaggeration, but I remember it being like every few seconds I would feel like someone was going to hit me, which of course, like, now that I've told you my full story in detail, you can kind of see where that comes from. It's like when you never really expect your caregiver to hit you, something happens in your body. It's like trauma just like changes your entire body forever, and you start like preparing for it because you never got to prepare for it beforehand. So my mind would constantly just have these constant hyper vigilant thoughts up until I got consistent in kickboxing, and it almost feels like a nice confidence level of like, I don't have to prepare for it anymore. Like, not to boast, like, not, I'm so tough I can fight, not so much like that, but it's more like I just don't feel the need to like mentally prepare with it, because I know for a fact, like, if something happens, it's like I'm probably going to be fine. I've at least got like some skill level there, so it feels like I no longer need to prepare for that attack. I've also started yoga, and I'm now officially underway with EMDR therapy, and that's for like childhood trauma. It's like a very interesting style of therapy that uses, I don't know how it fully works, but it uses like hand movements and certain stuff to like make it feel like the sort of childhood trauma and memories are less impactful today. You kind of like understand, like, yeah, that stuff happened so long ago, so your body doesn't need to always be in this like constant fight or flight. What's interesting is that sometime last year, after months of meditation and journaling, I would often take like mental health tests, like assessments, and I started scoring 0 on both depression and anxiety. So I thought I kind of like maxed out mental health. I thought, yep, like I'm done. For a while, I literally thought that, without actually realizing that so much of my life, my perception, my thoughts, my feelings is so heavily influenced, if not made up entirely from the childhood trauma. Trauma runs deep. I personally think it shapes everything about you if you've experienced like a somewhat brutal sense of like childhood trauma. But I'm growing. My relationship with my father is the best that it's ever been, and we recorded a podcast episode talking about some things that I'll link in the description. And although it hurts having these like psychological scars and memories, I don't feel resentful like at all, because this is generational trauma. Like, for so long I hated my father, I hated my brother, I hated like, everyone who's involved in this, but I realize now it's like they're somewhat of the victims too. My father genuinely just thought that this was like the way you're supposed to raise children, because this was how he was raised. So this goes deep. Like, this doesn't just go deep onto like an individual level. This goes deep, potentially like your entire bloodline. One of the goals, like probably the biggest goal, like core purpose that I have, is that I'm gonna stop that line. My child will live with like a high level of emotional well-being, and they won't have to experience something like this. I'm trying to do the work to achieve that goal, and I think I'm making some pretty good progress. I appreciate you watching this. I will link right now, like a card will pop up. If you're a young guy and you're feeling a little bit directionless in life like I was, I made like a complete guide to life for teenagers, so you can click on that right now. Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.